Hello, this is step 2, painting Helena, Yuki Helena, and the last demonstration of the week. You'll be sadly missed. Okay, so what to do here now? I think maybe filling in, I feel like I want to more clearly know that this is skin. So that might be somewhere that I could begin to find my way back in. I think the thing after lunch often is that you want to take ownership of your work again. And like, that's a bit too much yellow. And so it's kind of helpful, I think, to stand back and consider what's the broadest thing I can do to make this feel like this. And I just felt like there's enough going on in the face for now that maybe I could do something in the body, just as I say, as a way in, nothing too critical. So I've mixed some cadmium orange there with a little bit of the cadmium red. And I mean, there is a shadow up here as the shoulder turns away from us. Maybe bring some warmth in there too. Dirty one. Yes. Yeah, and up here there's a triangle that's in shadow. I just use the sap green and the cadmium red there. Sits to the right of the plait on the shoulder before getting to the crimson colour of the top of the dress. And it's a little bit higher on this side than the other side. It also comes over more because I suppose now from where I'm standing the plaid is ever so slightly in a different position. It's a tiny bit of shift, and it's fine for me to locate it forward a little bit, so it's cutting in more of a shape into the neck now. But we can, like, this is just for me, and when she sits back down in your position, we can adjust the plaid to work. Yeah, so just injecting a bit of dark where the water is will allow it to spread out there. Because when I put the piece on, it felt like it was too far that way for the shoulder, really. That's what caused me to look again at the position of the plaid. And so I suppose it's not really a big deal at the moment, but I might as well let myself know that the plaid will maybe end a little bit earlier as well now. Okay. And then there's that nice curve we were talking about around the back. Maybe I'll make some ready. Oh God. But it was just even wetter than I thought it was.
Is this gesture looking at your horizontals? Or is it just getting bearings?
Oh yeah, it was looking at that. Yeah, like the scaffolding of her and the arcs. We spoke about arcs, didn't we? And each person has an individual kind of arc to them, like different shapes that make up a person. And there's something about, I think we talked about this before as well, about how the energy contained within the piece that hits the page is all of the work up and after too, maybe. You know, like you're considering the full arc of the movement, and then it's only where it touches the page is the thing that's nailed down. But all of the move feels significant. Like,
sounds like tennis a bit, doesn't it? The swing in your
so
tennis
the muscle memory or something like that.
Before you hit the ball. Don't know, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, because it makes you feel more bold if you do it in the air a couple of times first, then maybe 10 times, a bit like the whole Barry McGuigan thing, you're going to wait until you launch that thing. So yeah, you're right about this business. And also I think anything where you're moving from the shoulder makes you feel a bit more confident and like expressive and bold. It's good for us to open the chest and be vigorous and move. It's just good to move. So anyway, there's some sort of change in the direction of the that shadow there that I think from, you know, I wanted to just make the adjustment so it felt like what I'm now seeing. And as I do that, it's got a tone in it that's equally dark as the, for example, you know, a touch here. There are things in the face that then can have a similar tone to them, just to keep things alive together. I'm going to put some blue in. I just noticed that that was needing to come over too, and as I did it, I just did it with the colour that I had, and then noticing that it will read more as hair, I suppose, if I bring blue into it. It's kind of satisfying to have something to grapple with, you know, almost to have something that's slightly moved a bit, so you're looking and you're curious as to what's here now and not resting on what I thought was there before. That's no longer relevant anyway. Like, I mean, we do our best to assume the same position, but it's exciting to have something to continue seeing in a fresh way. Like, oh dear. I wanted to put it all in front of that there. Okay, and then maybe the top of the, I wonder about doing something up here. It's similar, isn't it? Each time after lunch I seem to want to do this all kind of carry on around her, and then maybe flying something in the face. But I think it's better to do that than to launch straight into the, that's my phone, sorry, just turn it off. I'll just turn it on and turn it off. Maybe catch her after. Sorry. Okay, and then the back of the hat is deeper in tone than the front is. It's catching the light in the front, and it lets us know that it's quite a cylindrical thing. I don't remember it being so different earlier. The dark to light is quite clear now, which is helpful. The edge of the head might come slightly, maybe a little bit in there. And then holding the brush like that lets the colour flow quite freely down the way and have to where the hat meets the brim. But it might come down even further actually, because it's quite a narrow rim in the hat there. And then there's something of the, just in case that runs, I want to push it up. And I think then having it, pulling it back so that where I lift it is going to be darker from the back of the hat. And down to there, what I think is maybe the general direction that it's going in. Something like that. But really, I want that to be so clear. You don't really know what's exactly happening there, so I might just do that. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but really my main thing around putting that colour in was to establish the back of the hat, really. I could just print off roughly where I think it might end.
That's good.
And then there's a direction that way, but I don't want to go into too much detail up there, because a bit like a boat, if you start getting into the fine, you need to be an engineer or something, because it just goes a bit steamy. Okay, so the neck and things, now back to the finding the shadows in the skin. So with my eyes half closed, finding again where the shadows are in the skin. Just generally it's going to be a little bit darker here, in the same way as a bit darker there, turning away from the light. Yeah. And like this edge is probably going to fall away more than I had it. It's okay. And maybe a little bit of temple on the right hand side of the temple there. And just with my eyes half closed, any helpful darks I'm aiming to find might be even just to move in fairly soon now to the eye area. I think the shadow, there is some little bit of a tone here that lets me know that it sits back from the lower lip. You know, that it's slightly sitting, receding, that little area.
And is that still the same colour as the hat thing under that lip?
That's
But
that's
quite
sap,
pale.
it's mostly sap green,
Ah, right.
and sorry, yeah, and the cadmium red.
Okay.
I think the hat
With a
colour
bit
had
of
been
that
in
other-
there,
Yeah.
you know, it's just,
Mm.
And I think at this stage I'm happy enough for things to be slightly greyish. I just want to knock back things and, you know, more, it's quite an intuitive kind of a dance that's happening, like where I'm not letting myself think too much. I'm trying to squeeze stuff in the back door without thinking about it an awful lot. Like, it's just, there's something in that, like, if you start to think, what am I doing, you know, then it goes funny. But if
Yes.
someone having stood with the model for the day, your body has an idea of what to do. Like, if you let it alone, sometimes you just, I think there's something about the sense of, there's something about standing here and just letting whatever it is next, that's, you know, there's some sort of freedom. As I talk about it, I lose it now, won't I? I'd be like, I don't know. Anyway, it's all alright, like, because it is the thing of just being a piece of paper in the end, and you know, and the pleasure really is in this kind of seeking and putting something down, and trying to, you know, cajole it into some sort of life, and lose parts and find parts, and it's the curious looking that's the substance of this play, really, I think. And then the stepping back will allow you to know whether you're doing something you're happy with or not. But what about the eye now? Maybe the eye on the other side of the face. How long have I left, Edward? Do you know?
6.
No, that's okay. I think we could do that eye, because really there's not an awful lot to do in the eye. I keep saying this, the eye on the other side of the face, you know, less is more, I think. You don't want there to be too much of a distinction anywhere over there. So we've got the shape, the general shape of where the eyebrow comes down to meet the socket, to meet, the bridge of the nose here. There's a kind of a backward C shape here. And over here is eye, and here is nose. And on the way down the nose, the eye sits a little bit above, the bottom of the eyelid sits a little bit above halfway down the bridge of the nose from the point where it starts to go out the way. It's as though the lower lid is extending from the bridge of the nose almost to make the other leg of the C. So it'll be there somewhere. And then there's a warmth on the lid. And I mean, there is a little bit more light on the skin here that could be extracted, maybe just using the corner of a damp brush. But before I go into that too much more, I want to first find out what I need to do with the upper eyelash line, and then if I need to make lighter the skin between the eyebrow and the eye, I can do it. But first, I'm going to see about the position of the upper lid, and of course, the iris sits down from the upper lid then, and finding the position of the iris along the length of the eyebrow, deciding whereabouts across the eyebrow will the iris be located. And there's definitely a slant similar to the eyebrow, perhaps slightly less slightly more horizontal for the upper eyelid. So it's not quite parallel. I think the eyelid's a little bit steeper. And it may be that it needs to shift up a little bit actually. But I think I'll try and put the iris in first and see if the eyelid needs to lift. Just flung some green paint up my nose there. I push it up a little as I put the iris in. And then there's a sliver of white on the other side of the iris that causes it to sit back into the face a bit. Now that's quite a green, isn't it? So if I put some cadmium red into it, it'll take the colour out of it really. And then I push that up. Because we don't really want anything too lively or any contrasts too deep on that side of the face so that it sits away from us. Of course, when you do this eye, it can have more brightness anyway to compensate. But still, I want this to be not an awful lot going on over there. Something like that is the general area, I think, in which the eye sits. And then I think the next thing that might be helpful is for the eyelid to read as though it's extending further than the iris over to the left there. And of course you'd be doing the two eyes at the same time and letting part dry before we come back to it and things like that. But I think the next thing that might be helpful is a little bit of this alizarin crimson or something warm on the eyelid. Such that it all reads as one warm light shape here above the iris. And then maybe the alizarin crimson into the green could make a dark colour. When I half close my eyes, that will clarify more cleanly the shape where the nose stops and the eye socket starts. That's okay. I think that's okay. It's not need for the second one, I don't think. It's just something there. And then there's a bit of a darker quality to the lower lid too, a little bit. And I think the iris is encircled by something that's a bit darker before getting to the white of the eye. There's a turn on the lower lid that's a little bit warm too, so it's going down for a while before it starts to go steeply up to wrap around, and the bit that's going down feels to me to be quite dark, and then the bit that goes up is going to explain how the light is sitting on the cheekbone there, so the bit that goes up is kind of cogging around so that the light is revealed to the right of that. I think it's just helpful for me to know that that's the case, even if it's not quite clear to see. I want to feel like it's turning away and remembering that gesture all the time when all the bits are being painted. So just a little bit of yellow ochre, and I want to explain the edge of the nose without there isn't a huge difference in tone really, so there's just, as soon as I noticed there was a touch of yellow ochre there, I thought that might be a helpful thing to put in. And then it's also seeming to be a bit yellow ochreish in the iris. I might put a touch in around where the pupil would be located. And maybe then we can use, hopefully the eyelid has dried enough that I can put a dark line where the eyelash sits there, the dark of the eyelash line sits over the iris, and then maybe one more minute. I'll put the pupil in and hanging down from it like. It's like I'm asking you for permission, isn't it? I don't know, I'm asking you for permission for one more minute. Just, the dark inky colour. It's really, the brush is still intact, but it is fairly dry really. And I want to also inject a touch of it here too. And let the pupil locate itself somewhere in here. And then I'm going to connect it with the, because I often find there's something like a shadow that sits on this upper surface of the iris that drops down into, it casts the shadow down, I think, sometimes into that over, but I don't know if I've been standing back and observing everything. I might have just been looking at the eye as I stand back, but I think it's okay. And I would say that this, you could change the angle so that the eyebrow becomes slimmer as it comes in there. And then I'm going to use that tone that I used in the eyelid and bring it into pupil here, no, the nostril here, and maybe into that little bit in the line dividing the lips. There's a little cavity here that's that colour too, I think. Just almost as a reminder of where I need to put the darks next, I think. Or just to dilute, to disperse the same depth of tone elsewhere. And then you might go for your biggest brush and do something equally dark and big in the hair. You know, there's bits there that could have the same depth of tone as the things that are now sitting in the face. And there too. Okay. Thanks, Helena. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. It's kind of funny thing, isn't it, in the mouth? But I think when the red comes in, and you want stuff that's going to cause you to move forward. You want to challenge yourself with a darker, something more contrasting, something brighter, that'll cause you to be more courageous in the next move. Not lift it off again because you think, oh, shit, it's too bright. Maybe think, okay, it's bright, and now I need 2 more bits of bright.
Yeah.
So forward moving, onwards and upwards. Thanks, Anna. Oh, yeah, thanks very much.